Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Dreamworks Switch to Life. And today we're actually going to be predicting what I think will happen in The Bad Guys 2, the next Dreamworks sequel that just got announced with the release date of August 1st, 2025. Now, even before the first movie was released, I thought that The Bad Guys had the potential to become a great franchise. And since then, I always wanted to make a Bad Guys 2 prediction video. Unfortunately, I waited a bit too long and they actually revealed the plot synopsis. The way that I had the sequel going was nothing like what they actually revealed. So I totally get it if you want to skip out after I reveal what we actually know about the movie. I also want to give a quick mention to the Bad Guys TV show that is rumored to be released on Netflix at some point in 2024. Now, unfortunately, we don't know what the plot of this is, but I believe that it's a prequel series that will detail what the Bad Guys' criminal antics were like before the Bad Guys film where they decided to go good. However, the sequel will take place like the first month after the Bad Guys are released from prison at the very end of the first movie. But with that in mind, minor spoilers ahead, but probably nothing that the trailer won't actually give away. So apparently the second film is going to focus on the bad guys trying to create a new life for themselves after going good, but they are still feared by the general public despite having redeemed themselves and done their time in jail. That is until the bad guys are recruited by an all-female criminal gang who essentially want the bad guys to help them do one last job, one final heist. And of course, we actually know a lot about the returning cast members, which is all of them. Obviously, the bad guys will return, as will Diane Foxington, yay, but we'll also see the likes of Chief Misty Luggins, Tiffany Fluffett, and this one is actually very surprising, Professor Marmalade will return. Marmalade was the first villain of the Bad Guys movie, and really, I don't see why they would bother bringing him back. You don't really bring back the villain unless you plan to do something with this story, and the thing is, I've looked at Professor Marmalade, and I just don't see where his story could go. Really, you don't bring back a main villain from the first movie unless he's gonna help defeat the main villain of the second movie, or unless he was never defeated in the first movie. Well, he was defeated in the first movie. He was literally thrown in prison. There's no reason to bring him back for a villain role. So could he potentially be redeemed? No. Again, I really don't see how that could happen. He's just too evil. In the first movie, he could have had a sympathetic motive to what he's doing, but honestly, I felt it was better the way they went, where he's actually just doing things for the sake of evil, and he's just evil. There's no reason for him to actually want to redeem himself. And of course, the bad guys don't think he can actually be redeemed because he literally tried to kill one of their own. And that's really sad, but unfortunately, I just don't see a reason why they would even want to bring back Professor Marmalade, and yet they are. But let's move on for a second. Let's talk about the all-female criminal gang, who is essentially going to be the driving force of this movie and the main plot. Now, we don't actually officially know what these bad girls are going to look like, but if I had to guess, I'd say that they're going to probably pull some inspiration from the book series. Yeah, if you didn't know, The Bad Guys is actually based off of a 20-book series. Book 19 and 20 aren't out yet, but for now, let's focus on describing the first 10 books of the series. I think that the first movie was made from the first 5 books, and the second movie will be made from books 6 through 10. And if there's a potential third movie, it will most likely be based off of books 11 through 20, but those get pretty outlandish, so maybe not. Anyway, in books 1 through 5, we see the bad guys try to go good, and then they meet a guinea pig named Professor Marmalade, who essentially has an idea to make a zombie apocalypse made from zombie kittens and other stuff. And in book 5, the bad guys put a stop to him. So what happens in book 6? Well, it turns out that Professor Marmalade is actually revealed to be an evil alien who is sent to destroy the planet with an alien army, and books 6 through 10 focuses on that plot. Along with this, in the books, the bad guys ally themselves with the International League of Heroes, an all-female squad of super spies led by Ellen Fox, who was essentially the book equivalent of Diane Foxington from the movies. And we see a lot of similarities between the two. Sure, Diane Foxington is a solo criminal named the Crimson Paw, but she's essentially working with spy gadgets. Now, my theory is, who do you think trained her? Enter the International League of Heroes, or I guess, the International League of Bad Girls, who essentially are an all-female criminal squad who ended up training or maybe even being founded by Diane Foxington before she went solo as the Crimson Paw, and now they're back for revenge. You know, I just realized as I was saying that this is essentially the plot of Megamind 2, and that's actually kind of worrisome. But hey, you know what? The only reason Megamind 2 was bad, in my opinion, was its low budget. This is a high-budget movie made with A-list actors, not to mention the fact that they're bringing back the director of the first movie alongside a producer who will now serve as the co-director of this movie. Now, let's talk about who are the members of this female gang. Well, my personal theory, I believe that Diane Foxington was a member of the gang until she went solo in her criminal work as the Crimson Paw. But she learned all of her criminal skills from being in this gang, and she learned it from none other than the leader and founding member, Agent Kitty Cat, who is essentially a large anthropomorphic cat with ninja skills and weaponry. She also tends to have a bit of a serious attitude when it comes to things, and I believe she's the oldest member, and if it weren't for Ellen Fox, she would probably be the leader of the gang. Next, we have Agent Hogwild. Hogwild, as the name suggests, is a pig, and she's essentially the wild card of the team. She's willing to perform any stunt, either so that it can help in the heist, or just for the sheer thrill of it. We also have Agent Doom. She is a raven that is actually a bit reserved because she's a bit of a goth girl. You know, the kind who wear all black clothes and try to hide their personalities from the world and just look stern and sinister. Now, I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read the books, but I believe she's the tech whiz of the team. And finally, we have Agent Shortfuse. She's a Tasmanian devil who is essentially like Mr. Piranha is for the bad guys. Despite being one of the smaller members of the team, she's the muscle, the powerhouse. But unlike Mr. Piranha, she's not a chatterbox. In fact, she's a woman of few words. Almost none, in fact. Now, that's who the International League of Heroes is in the books, but they are obviously going to differ in some ways in the movie, and I believe that's actually good, especially because I really like the way they took the bad guys gang from book to movie, and I feel like they will do a great job taking the International League of Heroes from the books and turning them into the bad girls gang in the movie. So why exactly are they criminals and not super spies like they were in the books? Well, I actually think they are, except they're criminals who are just on the wrong side of the law. They steal from the rich and they give to the needy.
That sounds a lot like Robin Hood, who is notoriously good.
But with that in mind, that's essentially a lot of heists where they steal priceless artifacts and they always get away with it because those artifacts go missing. So honestly, I think that the Bad Girls gang will build up a bit of a reputation for themselves where they're feared by the general public because nobody knows where these mysterious priceless artifacts are disappearing to. So yeah, they're essentially vigilantes, you know, like Batman, and they're always evading the law, but they're always trying to do the right thing. So what exactly would be the plot? Why exactly do they need to partner up with the bad guys? Why can't they just pull off this heist themselves like they've been doing for years? Well, I think that this is actually where something interesting could happen. They try to recruit former member Diane Foxington to their cause so that she can help them in their biggest heist ever. And of course, Diane, not wanting to get into the robbing business, decides to step out. but unfortunately, the bad girls gang will blackmail her by revealing that she's the Crimson Paw. And it honestly makes sense why they would do this. See, the bad girls gang rob riches so that they can give them to the needy, but what Diane did was just steal riches for the sake of stealing riches. And sometimes it was for profit, sometimes it was just for fun. So essentially, they view her as an actual criminal, not a vigilante like they are. So it would make sense why, despite being their friend, they would definitely try to turn her into the authorities, at which point Diane would then be forced to help them with the heist. Of course, Diane, realizing that this job will require more than 5 people, decides to recruit the bad guys who are down on their luck because they're trying to find an honest living, but unfortunately they're still feared by society. So they actually decide to team up with the bad girls gang to pull off this heist, as it's their chance to show the world that they're more than just scary villains and they can actually have the potential to be heroes. Unfortunately, they're still doing things illegally, but at this point they're stealing for a good cause, so they might see it as the lesser of two evils. And I think that's actually why Diane became a governor after she retired from being a criminal. She wanted to find a way to help people that wasn't illegal. But of course, she's not doing a good job at that, which is why the bad girls are forcing her to go through with this heist plan. So what exactly is the heist? Well, remember how I said that Professor Marmalade was actually going to be in this movie? Well, I don't think he's going to be the main villain or anything. He'll probably just have a small supporting role. But I do believe that we know who the main villain of this movie is, and we already seen him. Now, I want to give a very quick mention. At this point, we are diving into pure speculation. This is just my personal thoughts, my opinions on where I wanted the movie to go before DreamWorks announced they were going to make it. At this point in time, there is nothing that is official. And honestly, this movie gets completely weird and insane, and at this point, I don't think it's actually going to happen. So keep watching if you want to see what I think The Bad Guys 2 should have been like before they announced it, or you can just click off the video right now and I wouldn't mind. So who do I think would be the main villain if not the Bad Girls gang? Well, I believe that it would be none other than Cuddles.
Cuddles. Finish them.
Now, if you'll recall, Cuddles was this human henchman that Professor Marmalade had throughout the first movie, but he didn't really do anything. He wasn't that standout. There was no reason for him to be there. But what if there was? There's something sinister going on with Cuddles that even Professor Marmalade can't predict. What is that? Well, take a look at the humans that inhabit the bad guys' world and take a look at Cuddles. They are so different. Why is that? I think it's actually because Cuddles is none other than an alien, or at the very least descended from an alien. Now, why do I think that? Well, if you will go back to the book series, you will know that Professor Marmalade is the main villain of all 10 books. However, when he was defeated in book 5, he turned into an alien named... how do you pronounce this? I think it's Kedge Floor Coin Rook Feckle Fudge Wax who? Yeah, okay, there's no way I'm pronouncing that. So, obviously, there is absolutely no way they're going to let the alien stick with that name. But my point still stands. In the book series, Professor Marmalade turns himself into an alien. So, why do I think Cuddles is an alien and not Marmalade? Well, Cuddles wasn't really in the book series, and from what I've seen, Professor Marmalade actually appears human. Not necessarily like human, obviously, but he appears to be an anthropomorphic animal who's just that, an anthropomorphic animal. Cuddles is the weird one. While a lot of people did just think he was some human, there are a few who thought that he was a robot or something like that. But I actually think that he's an alien who was sent down to planet Earth, or maybe crash landed on Earth or something like that, and is living with Professor Marmalade as his assistant, quote unquote. But I think that's actually a really big reveal because it would explain so much. Why does Professor Marmalade know that the Love Crater meteorite is actually a powerhouse of technology and mind control manipulation if he's just a guinea pig? Well, like the meteorite, if Cuddles comes from space, that means that the meteorite possibly came from an alien planet and it's filled with alien tech. The only reason that Professor Marmalade would even know it has the power to mind control a bunch of guinea pigs would be if a fellow alien like Cuddles told him. And that's why I believe Cuddles is an alien, and it would honestly be a really big twist. Speaking of, sorry for possibly spoiling the movie. Now, there's one final thing that I want this movie to dive into: the origin of the anthropomorphic animals in The Bad Guys. Why is it that there are anthropomorphic animals in a world that is mostly inhabited by humans, and the humans celebrate some of these animals as they become some of the most important people in the city, and yet others are reduced to criminals? Why is that? Well, I have a sneaky theory that I know why exactly that's the case. Alien technology. Now, let me explain. As we are all aware, Professor Marmalade used the meteorite to mind control a bunch of guinea pigs to do his bidding, but why is that happening? Again, if you go back to my theory where the meteorite is actually alien technology from another planet, the same planet where Cuddles is from, that means that Cuddles taught Professor Marmalade how to mind control animals with this tech. So, what if the aliens are trying to mind control all animals so that they can actually make it so that they can conquer planet Earth? That would actually be really interesting. But what if we go a step further? What if the aliens don't just know how to control animals, they also know how to turn humans into animals? Hence why we have anthropomorphic creatures running around. My personal theory is that the aliens are trying to turn humans into anthropomorphic animals, or just plain animals, so that they can find some way to mind control them with technology and turn planet Earth into their slaves. So what exactly is my theory? Well, I believe that the bad guys, either when they were kids or before they were born and their parents were the victims, were experimented on by an alien who accidentally crash landed on planet Earth, and thus they became anthropomorphic animals. Unfortunately, this alien couldn't get a signal out to his home planet in the universe, and so he decided to just let the anthropomorphic animals roam the Earth and give them their own lives. Then this alien would have his own descendants, namely Cuddles, and Cuddles would try to get a best friend who would end up being Professor Marmalade, but as they got older, Marmalade would start to view Cuddles as his pet or his slave, and essentially make it so that Cuddles was, just working for Marmalade. And then when the Love Crater meteorite showed up, Cuddles realized that there was alien technology inside the meteorite, and Professor Marmalade decided to use it to his advantage so that he could mind control a bunch of animals to do his bidding, just like the aliens were. But of course, when the meteorite blew up, it ended up sending a signal to outer space. There's no way that it would blow up by sending a giant laser beam up into the sky without some kind of consequences. Anyway, the aliens receive a signal from planet Earth and they decide to check out what's up, and that's when they discover that Cuddles, who is a descendant of their prince, is actually the grandson of an alien king, and he's destined to take over the throne. But he can't do that until he conquers a planet. So what better way than have him conquer Earth by turning all humans into anthropomorphic animals, then using mind control machines to make them their slaves. So that begs the question, why wasn't the mind control working on Professor Marmalade or any of the bad guys in the first movie? Well, I think that since Marmalade was the user, there's no way he would amp up the power to make it so that he himself would be mind controlled, but instead he just gave enough power so that common animals could be controlled. So if they go through with this plot, that might actually be good because it would make the movies a lot more like the books. See, in the books, everyone is an anthropomorphic animal. It's just the way the world works. There's not a single human in sight. And that's kind of weird because in this movie, humans are everywhere and the anthropomorphic animals are few and in between. So you can see where I'm going with this plot, right? So let's start from the beginning. The movie will start by having the bad girls try to pull off a heist against Cuddles, who inherited Professor Marmalade's estate after he was thrown in prison. But unfortunately, they fail and they realize they need help. So they recruit the aid of Diane Foxington, who decides to say no, but then the bad girls say that they're going to blackmail her because they know her identity as the Crimson Paw. So Diane makes it a priority and she ends up recruiting the bad guys to help the bad girls on their heist, and they end up pulling off the heist, at which point they accidentally uncover an evil plot from Cuddles, who again is a descendant of an alien who crash landed on Earth, experimented on them creating anthropomorphic animals, and now Cuddles is about to do the same thing, but on a worldwide scale, using an alien invasion and a bunch of alien rays that will city by city turn humans into anthropomorphic animals. And where better to start than Los Angeles? So, of course, the bad guys know that they need to put a stop to this heinous plan, but the only way they can do that is by launching themselves into space to take on the alien spaceships. So they pull off a heist alongside the bad girls to steal a rocket ship from NASA. Then they go to space, only to be captured by the aliens, at which point they discover what their origins actually are. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I actually think that the only member of the team who actually is a human that was turned into an anthropomorphic animal is Mr. Snake. Everybody else is a descendant.
My parents met on a convocation. My cousin got hit on the head with an anchor, and after that, he only swam in a circle.
What I mean by that is, if you look at the birth dates of the characters, you'll know that Mr. Snake was born in the year 1965, meaning he's 57 years old. The rest of the bad guys were born in the 1990s or something, which is almost a 30-year difference. So it makes sense that Mr. Snake would be the only member of the bad guys who was at one point human.
When you grow up a snake, nobody shows up to your party. Birthdays are a constant reminder that out there, I'm just a scary, good-for-nothing monster.
The rest of them are actually descended from their parents who were humans turned into anthropomorphic animals. So anyway, the bad guys and the bad girls team up together to take on the aliens and take down the mothership so that they can make it so that humans will remain humans and thus not mind-controlled anthropomorphic slaves by the aliens. Unfortunately, they kind of fail in this. They end up getting captured, and that's when the aliens turns the entire world, city by city, into anthropomorphic animals. Now, there's actually one thing that I really want to bring up. In the book series, there's a bit of a time travel thing where the bad guys travel back in time to the time of the dinosaurs, and they bring back a velociraptor to the future who ends up gaining intelligence and basically becomes Milton. And while that would be nice to see, there's just no way that's going to happen. But you know who I think would make for a great Milton? Here, kitty, 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 kitty. This little cat right here. he's already a member of the bad guys team, so it would make sense if they actually went through and gave him intelligence, and he became an official member of the team, and he became so smart that he was able to help break the bad guys out of the alien prison, and thus they again attack the mothership, and they make it so that the aliens can't control the now anthropomorphized humans, and thus they end up saving the world, but at a really bad cost. Unfortunately, this means that the humans are now forever anthropomorphized animals. Or are they? You see, throughout the movie, the bad guys will be struggling with trying to find ways to redeem themselves in the eyes of the public. And of course, they've already done their time in jail, but they're still monsters. They're still viewed as villains, and the only way that they can ever go back is to turn themselves human. Well, what if the bad guys are forced to make a choice? They can either use the spaceship to turn themselves into humans, or they can make it so that the entire world goes back to being normal humans, and they only get one shot. Unfortunately, I think that the bad guys will make the choice to turn humans back into humans, and they will stay anthropomorphic monsters. And honestly, that's just common sense, because why would you go back to being human when everyone around you is now an anthropomorphic animal? You would have essentially doomed them to be the monsters that you are. And I feel like if they went the other direction by turning the humans back into humans and remaining animals themselves, they still stand out in a crowd, but it's highly likely that they would be praised as heroes. And of course, it also leaves the door open for the Bad Guys 3, but that's for another day. Now, honestly, I actually really enjoyed this video that I just made and the movie that I just basically plotted, but unfortunately, I don't think that's actually gonna be the case. Honestly, what made the Bad Guys film special was that it was just a bunch of criminals trying to redeem themselves with a series of heists and heist antics, and that's really cool. But aliens, I can see the potential for heist antics, but at the same time, it still feels out of place. There's not really a clear connection as to why the Bad Guys films would just go from heist to aliens. And that's really sad. So while I do enjoy the movie that I just made, I don't think it's actually going to happen. So the only thing that has been confirmed for the actual film itself is that the bad guys are going to be recruited by a criminal gang made up of all females, and they will be forced to pull off one last job. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you made it to this point, you are a true fan of the channel, and I really appreciate you, so thank you. If you aren't already, make sure that you subscribe so you can get more movie predictions like this, as well as movie reviews. I left a link down below to my review of the first Bad Guys movie, as well as the holiday special, The Bad Guys in a Very Bad Holiday. But with that in mind, I hope that you are all staying safe out there, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.
Webs, you feel like a girl's trip? Yes. Later, boy.
Everybody, I want to go on the girls trip.